Rebel Force Radio presents
Experimental Unit Clone Force 99. The defective clones with desirable mutations. They call themselves the Bad Batch.
The Bad Batch.
This is the Bad Batch After Show.
You know, there's a line in the episode this week where Hunter says to Omega, you know, we never stopped looking for you. Wrecker's saying, oh, we went across the galaxy 4 times. Hunter's like, no, 5 times. And I just want to shout out to Matt Miknovitz, the story editor there, and all the writers. Thank you for not having or feeling the need to show us all of those crossing the galaxies, because, you know, I love spending time with the Batch, but what I'm really enjoying about this season so far is the momentum, and they don't seem to have time for or need for the sort of adventure of the week formula that really was the model for Bad Batch in the first and second season, much of the second season. But no, I thought it was great. And what it did is it showed, I think, some restraint from the writers to say, okay, we've got 15 episodes. Let's not, make people wait too terrible long for the big reunion. Let's do it at the end of the first, I guess we could kind of call this like the first big chunk, the first quarter. We'll say 25% in, and we got it. But anyway, we want to know what you think here on the Bad Batch After Show from Rebel Force Radio. Thank you all so much for being here. Great to have you all here joining us live. If you're listening on delayed podcast, make sure you try and catch the show live when you can. We're on YouTube, and we do this on Wednesday nights, 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, unless we do it on Thursday night. If it's a double or a triple feature, we need a little more time to digest the episodes. But I'll tell you, this episode is very, very fresh for me. I'm sure it's fresh for all of you, and I'm sure it's very fresh for this guy, and that's, of course, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Back for another Bad Batch Bash. That's us here at Rebel Force Radio. We're bashing with the Bad Batch. What you said, this kind of was an adventure of the week, but the big difference is it ties into the big story. It's not just running an errand for Sid. We understand that there's high stakes, and it's when I say adventure of the week, it almost felt like an episode of The Fugitive in a way, as these guys are trying to lay low and stuff. But it was good. It ties into the big story, and they didn't let you forget that, because we had a few scenes with Hemlock and Nala Se and stuff like that. And I think that's important, especially in this third season, is we never forget all that stuff going on in Mount Tantus, because I think that's where the big payoff is eventually going to be, is they will return there. And they kind of foreshadowed that a little bit in this episode when Omega said she wanted to go back.
She wanted to make sure that they knew the way back.
Yeah.
And Crosshair, one thing we know about Crosshair is that he never goes back. He never looks back. That's the thing about this guy. He's always pushing forward. And, it's don't worry about Batcher. Don't worry about dragging people along with you. We've got to survive. We've got the mission in front of us. And when at the beginning of the series, when the Bad Batchers were kind of all faced with this new world that was in front of them, they wanted to pause and they wanted to think about what direction should they go, but not Crosshair. Crosshair was like, no, good soldiers follow orders, and we're going full steam ahead. So it's very interesting. I mean, Crosshair, you could say, pun intended, is sort of at a crossroad, and he's certainly at a crossroad at the very end of this episode as he's staring across the void at his 2 former comrades, and it's like, it kind of reminded me of that line in Force Awakens. Who talks first? You talk first? Do I talk first? Who's going to talk first? Talk first.
And
so
that's
who's
the
going to
big
be
question.
the first to break the tension, right?
Yeah, and what is going to be said,
Yeah.
You still got that $50 you owe me? Do you know where my electric toothbrush went? What would they say?
I have it right here.
Yes. But yeah, that's what I was wondering. What's the first thing they're gonna say to that guy? It'd probably be like, "What the hell happened to you, man?
Yeah.
I thought we were a team. I thought we were brothers. They were roommates back on Camino."
Yeah.
Crosshair really he really stuck it to him.
Yeah, I mean
But,
they did have that reunion there in the like the middle of the second season or towards the end of the second season, uh, where they kind of worked together, but I don't
that is
feel
true.
that they really moved on. I think that it was just like that was a temporary moment. They were trying to survive, but now he has nowhere to go other than to, go with his former brothers or, and he already made a choice. There was a great scene when Omega decides that she wants to go after Batcher. Batcher was dog napped. He ended up at the pound by the man, by the way. Did you catch that? That captain? His name is Man. MANN.
Yeah,
and when he said he ran this town, I'm like, that's right. The man does run that.
That's good. Hey, I did a little research. The actor's name is Harry Lloyd, and he appeared in a few episodes of Doctor Who and Game of Thrones and stuff. But the bit of trivia about him that I found really interesting, he is the great-great-great-grandson of author Charles Dickens.
Get out. Really?
Yeah, so there's literacy royalty in his family. And I wonder if he uses that in job interviews. Well, I am the great-great-great-grandson of Charles Dickens.
Well,
You ever read a Christmas story or not Christmas story? A Christmas.
Unfortunately, all of Charles Dickens' great works, A Christmas Carol, all
Christmas
of his
Carol,
great works are, I prefer Christmas Story, actually.
Yeah, I do too.
All of
I
his
prefer
great
none
works,
of them at this time of year. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, all of his works are public domain. So the great-great-great-grandson is, I don't think he's still raking in any of the Dickens family fortune, but those royalties. But yeah, so I mean, there's this scene when Omega decides that she wants to go and go after Batcher, and Crosshair's like, no, in typical Crosshair fashion, no. It's kind of like we have no time for these worthless life forms.
Right.
And we got to go in the mission, forget the mutt. And she says, no, we don't do that. I'm not going to abandon him or abandon her. We wouldn't have gotten off the planet if it wasn't for her. And she throws him the credits and says, fine, you know what? If you want to go. I'll find my way. And it's like, wow. I mean, there's a lot of confidence there. And, we were talking about this a little bit last week, is the difference between a child character that they run the risk of making them unlikable and too precocious but Jim, I think we were talking about last week about how much that Omega's character earns this stuff. So she sits and she's a whiz at Sabak. Well, we know why she is, because we saw her at Sid's place learning and watching. A lot of times she was there with Sid while the batch went off on these missions, and then Sid was using her and teaching her to hustle and scam. So it wasn't like, oh, of course, here comes Omega. She just happens to know how to be a whiz at Sabak. So it's that kind of stuff, and it's also just the way she's written, her dialogue, the way she's performed, and I love that she had the confidence to say, she's not begging Crosshair to stay or anything like that. She's like, oh, you want to go? Go. Tosses him the credits. She's got a higher calling, a higher purpose.
Yeah, she sure has come a long way since she was that kid who'd never been off Camino, never seen dirt before in the first few episodes of season 1. And like you said, Jason, you can chart her growth according to her experiences and the knowledge she picks up along the way. So it's a really well-written and fleshed out character. And she does earn everything. And that's, to me, becoming more and more important, especially in the realms of Star Wars. These characters have to earn what they possess as far as skills, talent, knowledge, and the Force. Hey, so, I've been thinking about this Project Necromancer for like the last week. So I looked up the word necromancer. It's an actual term.
Mm-hmm.
I thought
I only know because I believe there was an episode of the X-Files called The Necromancer.
It rings a bell.
Yeah, and so I'm familiar with that. It's about resurrecting the dead, I believe, right?
It's about being able to communicate with the dead. So you can summon their spirits or visions and learn things from dead people. So it got me thinking, well, like in the world of Star Wars, who's a necromancer? Well, Luke Skywalker would certainly be one. Talking to Ben Kenobi.
Oh.
So
yeah,
I don't, it's what, why would they name it Necromancer if Tarkin's looking to have eternal life?
Palpatine.
I mean, who did I say? Did I say
Tarkin?
Tarkin? What the hell is wrong with me today? I got to have a drink here.
That'll make it all better.
I need to get my head on straight. But is Tarkin? God, I did it again. Is Palpatine?
You got Tarkin on the brain? Is that?
I got Tarkin on the
Steven
brain.
Stanton trying to send you some sort of signal from?
Oh my God!
Out in California,
or maybe it's the spirit of Peter Cushing himself, and I'm necromancing right in front of everyone. I'm necromancing.
Peter Cushing's like, hey, someone's finally talking about me. Let's screw with this guy right here.
So is Palpatine trying to talk to the dead? Or is he just taking the term and sort of, twisting it around to suit his own needs by saying, that he will be brought back to life? And they just call it Project Necromancer because it sounded good.
Yeah, you know what? I got to give the tail of the tape here real quick because I got a topic I was going to throw out, and we'll just go down a rabbit hole real quick. Let's just do it here to make it official. Tail of the tape. We are talking about season 3, episode 4, A Different Approach, aptly named episode because the whole thing is about Omega learning from Crosshair and Crosshair kind of learning from Omega and their different approaches to things. Directed by Saul Ruiz, written by Ezra Nachman, and of course the story editor Matt Michnovitz clocks in. This is a shorty, minus credits, just a little over 24 minutes, and the original air date for those of you listening in the future, February 28th, 2024. But what I wanted to mention, Jim, is as we're talking about Project Necromancer, there's all this talk about, or all we see is Palpatine trying to create what I believe is a sustainable line of clones so that he can live forever, so that he can possess these or inhabit these bodies. But that's the one thing we haven't seen yet in Star Wars is possession of a body by a Jedi or a Sith. Now, maybe it's in comics and maybe it's in the novels, but like we know, we've seen cloning technology, but I think they're burying the lead. Since when do Jedi or Sith, I guess this is a Sith thing, I can't imagine a Jedi possessing another body, but since when do the Sith have that ability to do that?
Well, since Rise of Skywalker, I guess.
Right, we know, yes, we know that it works, but it's just like we're assuming that's what, what is going to happen, but I don't know. It just seems kind of weird.
I think Palpatine was saying that all of the Sith Lords before him sort of inhabited him in some way, where he was like the sum total of all of these Sith Lords. So every time they pass, at the hands of their own apprentices, the master and the apprentice situation there with the Sith Lords is very complex, and it usually ends with the apprentice killing the master. Right. And so at that moment, then the transformation happens, the transference of souls. And so if this keeps happening over the course of 1,000 years, it's pretty crowded inside Palpatine right now. So maybe he's looking to put an end to it. Hey, the buck stops here. He's going to put an end to it and just transfer himself and his own knowledge into a clone body.
Well, that's definitely part of it is, he he has had apprentices, but he'll be damned if they take him out. I mean, he's got this insurance policy that he is going to live forever. He doesn't even really, he could get to a point where he could just have clones of himself as his apprentices. So, it is definitely the ultimate arrogance, ultimate hubris. There is no continuity. There's no succession plan with Palpatine. He is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end of the galaxy, of the universe. Now, we did have some folks in the chat respond to the question about history in Star Wars of possessing bodies and spirits. Maddie tosses out here that that maybe the Night Sisters do this. Tom Baker says early Star Wars comics. Our pal Connor, he says, yeah, they did it in the Jedi Academy game back in the day. Some old Sith named Ragnos. I know, old goofy canon stuff. Thanks, Connor. I appreciate that disclaimer there at the end. He's like, oh, that's what Swank's going to say. Tom comes in and says, Dark Side Power, Night Sisters Age. Madaween has the best answer. Somehow they figure it out. Yeah. I mean, it's nothing I'm losing sleep over, but I just think that it's interesting that so much of the Star Wars lore that centers around Palpatine also centers around this. He spends decades trying to perfect these clones so that he can transfer himself, and yet there's no clean example of that happening before. But maybe we'll find out, and maybe it's doesn't work out as well as he had hoped too.
Yeah, right. Well, that's why I think he uses clones, is because they seem to be sort of an empty vessel to begin with.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
And he could just keep Xeroxing up copies of the same thing. And when he wears it out, I'm tired of this body. I got to get me a new one. He goes to the 3D printer and prints up his next clone, and bada bing, bada boom, he makes the transfers. Now, when they did this in the Dark Empire comic books, he would be younger. He would be younger, and it was a clone of himself too.
Yes. So you saw young Sheev.
Yeah, Sheev.
He's just a young Sheever.
he was young, and then the young Palpatine clone body would gradually, or rather rapidly, start to show all those signs of old age, like Palpatine does.
Yeah.
This is before the whole scarred and deformed deal.
Yeah.
And so he would resemble old Palpatine, the clone, because the dark side energy would eat away at the physicality of the clone body. It couldn't withstand the dark side power that it contained. And so they sort of roll with that a little bit in the Rise of Skywalker as well.
Yeah. It's unclear as to what is damaging the clone body. But we can assume that it's trying to hold on to all that dark side power, because we have to make the leap that by the time we get to Rise of Skywalker, it's still not perfect, right? It's not a perfect solution. He's probably going through these clone bodies fairly quickly, but he needs Rey. Now, I know we got to get back to Bad Batch, but I got to throw this out because a friend of mine sent me a text, and at first, I be honest, I read it and I go, I don't know, I don't really think that's possible, but I'm going to throw it at you guys, see what you think, because it's been haunting me ever since I got it. So he writes, so listening to your Bad Batch after show, and I think that this is definitely part of making the sequel trilogy better, but that Rey isn't really a Palpatine by birth. Perhaps rather she's one of these clones that can accept Palpatine's blood count and become a host for his mind and spirit. Omega would then be a trial run for Rey. So that would make both things that we've learned about her true. She is a Palpatine, but her parents were nobody. So is that on the table that they could potentially retcon to some degree that she is the biological daughter of a younger Palpatine clone, which I've never been wild about that idea,
Right.
But they have established in this episode, Nala Se, when she's trying to throw Hemlock off the trail of Omega's, the successful transfer to Omega, she says, oh, it's a false positive. It's an aberration, and just an aberration like the clone herself. So being an aberration, that tells me that it was somewhat of an accident, that she wasn't necessarily created by design. They're creating this clone army. All of a sudden, one of them ends up being a female, okay? Or they're doing the unaltered clone business that they're doing for Django. One of them ends up being a female. Well, that's weird. But it just so happens that this female then has the ability to accept this midichlorian infusion. And then you've got Rey out there decades and decades later, and she's the answer to Palpatine's plot. I don't know. It's possible.
Sure it is. I mean, a lot of this stuff I think is, the way they made a left turn right in the middle of the sequel trilogy, anything's possible.
Well, yeah. But I mean, do you think would it be more satisfying to you if Rey tied back in some way to this, not just Omega because it's Omega. I don't want to be like, oh, she's got to be related to Omega because every Star Wars character has to be related to somebody. I'm not saying that, but it would be, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of it would be interesting if if you could trace back Rey to this whole Palpatine plot back at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that being a storytelling possibility, because you have to ask yourself, well, what is the purpose and importance of Omega to begin with? Why are we even hearing this story? Why are we even being told this story?
Yeah.
So to me, it almost has to connect to some of the bigger characters in Star Wars. And if it does provide something of an element in the origin story of Rey, then I think that would help a little bit for us to understand, exactly what's going on there, because it seems like a lot of that is kind of foggy still.
Yeah.
The stuff with Rey and her parents and,
right.
and also the whole Star Wars element of the certain point of view that always is on the table as well. And, it's almost tradition in Star Wars storytelling to take what you think and turn it inside out. I mean, that's almost part of the whole deal at this point. I mean, and it's not just a Disney thing. George Lucas did a 180 when it came to the original trilogy. Right. And he decided he wanted to wrap it all up at Return of the Jedi. So a lot of his plans changed, and he took some liberties with the storytelling as well. And that's where we get the certain point of view from. So that's part of the Star Wars DNA. And I think anything that we know about the story it's not, locked down in concrete. It's not carved in stone. It can be changed. And that's what's been happening with Star Wars. Like I said, all the way back since 1983, essentially.
What would be interesting is what if we found out that this process in which they infuse midichlorians into these clones, what if we find out that it's temporary, or that it's fleeting, or that it causes something really terrible down the line? We see Rey as a young woman. We see Omega as a little girl. So there's definitely room for things to go wrong and go poorly for these, artificial, I hate to use that word, that seems kind of anti-clone, but you know what I mean? Like these, these clone Jedi, or these clone Force sensitives, or these, high M count clones, whatever you want to label them. So I think there's some interesting things that they could talk about. or certainly tell us in the future, so you can't just assume that, life goes on.
I'm glad you brought up M count, because I think there's confusion about Omega. They never say that Omega has an overabundance of midichlorians or anything. They just say her blood can withstand the transfer
Right.
of midichlorian rich blood. So it doesn't necessarily mean that she has like this large amount of midichlorians. Everyone in the Star Wars universe has midichlorians. Everyone. But it's the ones with a really high count, like Anakin's, off the charts, over 20,000, more than even Yoda. So, I mean, just to be a person existing in Star Wars, you have to have a certain amount of midichlorians. And that's what the Jedi would use then when they would take people's babies away from them.
It was the justification.
Yes. Yeah. So if you have the high count, then off the kid goes. And it's for everyone's, safety, really, for the baby's safety, for the family's safety. You can't just have someone who's unnaturally strong in the Force but doesn't know how to use it. Someone's going to get hurt if that happens.
Right.
It reminds me of young Clark Kent, when Pa Kent would tell him, you can't, he wanted to be the star of the high school football team and get the attention of the girls and stuff. Instead, he was the guy taking care of all the uniforms and stuff like that. So he wasn't even playing, because if he went out on that field, he'd score a touchdown every time and mow everyone down on the field. Can't have that. So he had to be the equipment manager instead. And so that's what you'd have to do with babies and kids in the Star Wars universe. If they started to reveal these strong Force abilities, you'd have to train them. Otherwise, all hell would break loose. So the Jedi had to do what they did. And the way they would, like you said, it would just be a way of proving a point, large midichlorian count.
Yeah. The central, if you were looking at just this episode in isolation, the central plot, the central conflict is they got to get off the planet. Then they got to get the transmission to Hunter and Wrecker, but they can't do it from the crash site because these long range transmissions are monitored. They got to get out of orbit. So how are they going to get off planet? Well, Omega has an idea. She thinks that she's just going to walk right up to the space station. She's just going to walk right up to the ticket taker and convince her to just give them passage without the chain codes, without any kind of official, without any authorization, because we're living in a totalitarian regime, and so everybody that travels has to have these chain codes. These have come up in Star Wars in the past. And she says, yeah, sure, I can be on the take. I can take a bribe, 30,000 credits. And, of course, they have no money. And then they end up doing it with Omega's approach. It's all about no blasters, no blasting, no one getting hurt. And
she's a pacifist.
Yeah, she is actually like a pacifist here.
That comes from the upbringing from the Kaminoans, I'm sure. Nala Se, all of them. I think they were very, very peaceful type of people, and they would create clones to do their dirty work for them.
Yes, but here's the thing why is it, though, that Omega is so reluctant throughout this episode to let Crosshair be Crosshair? I mean,
right.
She's not a stranger to violence. She's used violence in self-defense. She's
absolutely
in the past. She's not had any problem with Wrecker picking people up and throwing them into each other. Now, we do have the weird thing with Bad Batch with the blaster bolts looking like stun bolts. We do have that. So, but nonetheless, I mean, aggressive negotiations is something that she's not a stranger to. The Bad Batch is not a stranger to. But she's really holding off with Crosshair. And they don't come out in this episode and say it, but is it possible that she's trying to, he's kind of a loose cannon. He's definitely got anger management issues and other kinds of issues. Is she just trying to keep him chill and not blowing his stack and getting back, a taste of murder and death? And I don't know. That was.
She thinks he's too bloodthirsty. That with one
she
kill,
doesn't wanna...
he'll end up wiping out everyone. Those are tough questions to ask, and it almost feels like that's all just her making that statement. She doesn't want to hurt anyone. It's very much on the surface because they're surrounded by Imperials, and you're right. I mean, they've done a lot of damage. My favorite was last week when she sneaks up into the cockpit of the shuttle and she blasts the pilot from behind. And I mean, it's just point blank range. She's inches away from him.
Yeah.
It would have been kind of grisly to have a kid go up in a ship and shoot someone in the back of the head with a fatal shot. But it was only a couple minutes after she did that, then Crosshair made his way to the cockpit and he threw the guy out of the ship after it had already taken off. And the guy fell, 30, 40 feet to his death.
Right.
So
yeah,
it's like nobody's getting a free pass here, despite the stun bolts, despite Omega's sudden desire not to hurt anyone. And also maybe she was just looking around at the people there and, thinking to herself, there were kids out there and stuff. And maybe she just didn't want to.
Well, it certainly draws a lot of attention. And they are trying to be on the down low. But I mean, Crosshair is also no dummy. I mean, he knows how to do it and do it effectively.
Right. He's a sharpshooter.
Exactly. He's a sharpshooter. He's been in situations like this, much tougher situations. But he also shows a great deal of restraint, and he sort of lets her do it her way. And, he's occasionally with a sarcastic quip of, yeah, of course you know how to do this, or of course you would have this idea. But it's not until the very end when they really have their backs up against the wall, and she just says, "Okay, fine, let's use your approach. Let's do it. Let's do it your way."
I do want to point out when they try to buy their tickets for the transfer, the transport, and they get charged 15,000 credits a piece.
Yeah,
so that's 30,000. That's 20,000 more than Han charged Luke and Ben, and Luke was bent out of shape about that. And that's 20 years in the future. So yeah. That's one thing you can say about the Star Wars universe. The inflation rate on doing like under the table deals actually shrinks.
Yeah, well, I think
say what you want about the Empire, but it's a solid economy they got going on there.
Well, they're on Lao, where it's run by the man, Captain Man. I would imagine that he gets a pretty good percentage of any of those unauthorized space flights.
Oh, they kick up to the boss.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
But man. he's all about law and order too. I don't think
he's sitting there gambling with a minor, and he says that gambling isn't even legal there. So I don't know if he's Mr. Law and Order. I think he's Mr. Opportunist.
Well, yeah, he's working the system to his own advantage. But I also think he's all about oppressing the people who live there. And if somebody's looking for a transport off planet, I don't think that any deals done under the table, I don't think man has any knowledge of that, just for self-preservation alone, because it'd be like, well, why did you we were in pursuit of them and you let them go for a bribe?
Well, that's the beauty of it. He wins either way.
Yes, he always wins. That is true.
He always wins. Hey, this is a call-in show. The number to call, 708-866-1737. That's 708-866-1737. We have our official call screener with us, Mr. Tyler Page, as always. Hey, Tyler.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Oh, all right, man. We got a couple of callers already in the queue, but the switchboard is open. We've got plenty of slots available, so as much as we love to read your chats, you all know me, I don't like to read, so I'd much rather hear your voices. So give us a call, 708-866-1737. We've thrown some various topics out on the table, everything from how is Palpatine transferring his soul, his essence into bodies of clones, and is there any precedent for that in Star Wars, or as I like to call real Star Wars? No, I'm just kidding. Just stoking the embers here, guys. Also, Omega and her refusal to let Crosshair be Crosshair, man. Let him be himself. Let him express himself with some sniper shots to the head of some of these Imperials and the guards there at the. I thought it was like a dog pound, but I guess it's like a cargo area.
Cargo port.
Yeah.
Spaceport, cargo docks, I think they refer to them. Hey, during the shootout at those cargo docks, when Crosshair opened fired on the Imperials, he did take out a bunch of them, but it happened so fast, it was so brief, where he does look at his hand. He's like, damn, this damn hand of mine is messing with me.
I missed that. Did he look at the hand?
It was so fast. It was quick. I rewound to check it out, and then I noticed earlier in the episode, Hemlock is walking around wearing a single gloved hand, much like Luke in Return of the Jedi, and they show him, and he's like rubbing his hand too. And I'm thinking to myself, I've seen him do this before. I thought that was some tick, but I think that this hand thing is there's something
What's
to
going
it.
on? What's with all the hand?
Crosshair
This show's got a lot of hand.
Crosshair suddenly started having problems with his hand, and Hemlock seems like he's also favoring a hand. Something's up with that. I want that to be explained, because there is no explanation at all. You can speculate all you want, but nothing's been set in stone as far as Crosshair's injured hand. And I think that's going to be revealed at some point, and it might have something to do with Hemlock as well.
Interesting. Well, Mac, I've done this long enough with you. I know never to doubt when you throw out a theory. Tyler, thanks, buddy. Hopefully we'll get some more people calling. 708-866-1737. Don't be shy. We go easy on you. But if you got some thoughts about all this hand talk, give us a call.
Hand. Gotta get hand.
When they were on this, I don't know if it's just the town is called Lao or if it's the system or the planet, but Captain Man mentions it at one point. But on Lao, one little detail in the animation I thought was really great is you could see the character's breath. So it was obviously cold there.
I put that in my notes as well. The fog of the character's breath.
Yeah.
I thought it was, I watched the episode twice. And the first time I watched, I paid no attention to it. And then the second time I caught it. And I was like, oh my God, yeah. It's like Chicago-like weather there on Lao, I guess. I had no idea it was so chilly out there. Because they don't show anybody doing the typical shiver. That's usually how they convey something's cold when you're watching a show or
Right.
Somebody has to shiver or you get the teeth. But no, it's just simple fog of the character's breath. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it was a nice little detail. I also, speaking of Captain Man, I mean, I think it's interesting how you got Omega there, and she's hustling at this cantina, at this bar, and then I mean, immediately, like on cue, the Empire is right there, and they're hustling them people right back. Like there's just like you can't even make a dishonest living because you're not going to be as dishonest as those Imperials. Like Captain Man. And also you can imagine the Empire, they're not capable of keeping that strong of a grip on every system, every planet. So they install these guys like man, and they live like warlords and kings and with just complete and total autonomy. And so it's no wonder, as you look at Andor, for example, and you start to see in Rebels these mini revolutions that are happening, these rebellions on all these systems. Obviously, it's very, very flawed because everybody's living under not just a big galactic tyranny, but also a very local tyranny too. So these guys like Man are just emblematic of the type of scumbags that are running these systems, these planets.
Yeah, it's a definite sign of just the overall vibe of the universe with the Empire in control. It just becomes every man for himself, rip-offs everywhere, bribes everywhere, sneaky stuff, things going on under the table. It's just the overall vibe of the Empire, and Palpatine loves it. You know, this is he just feasts off of people's misery, and the more misery there is in the galaxy, the stronger he grows in the
Oh,
dark side of
right.
the Force.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a win-win. And I also like the design of this man character. He's not like a typical, uh, very put
Imperial.
together Imperial officer. He's
Yeah.
slovenly. He hasn't shaved. He's overweight. Yeah. So
Yes.
you just know what you're dealing with. It's as soon as
He's
you
what
look
they
at him.
call he's what they call in my neighborhood a schlub.
A
He's
schlub.
schlub.
There you go.
He's a total schlub. Um, he's but a character you love to hate, and he meets his end during the shootout at the docks. Something that happened very quickly yet again. But man does not survive the escape of Omega and Crosshair. He's running by one of those grates, which all get opened. All the grates
Oh,
get open,
yeah.
and it's all this wildlife in there. And a tentacle reaches out and pulls Captain Man into the grate. And the tentacle got me thinking they must have a Rathtar in that
That's
crate.
definitely a
It was
Rathtar.
very Rathtar. And there goes Man, and he just gets pulled in, and you hear him screaming, and you see the crate shaking and stuff, and he gets his just desserts. Something a
That
few just
Rathtar had some manwich.
that's so crazy. That's what I had for dinner tonight. I saved some for you, Swank. There's leftovers in the fridge. A couple of observations I made. The stormtroopers on this planet. What's the name of this planet again?
Lau. Lau.
Boy, these stormtroopers love to accessorize. Some of them were wearing coats, but the oddest thing, several of them on the over at the docks, at the cargo docks, they were wearing goggles. And I was over their helmets. I was like, what is the purpose of stormtroopers wearing goggles? What is that?
Yeah,
But they just love to accessorize.
they're mad. Yeah, I don't have a lot of shots of them, but I did notice that that they definitely looked different. They looked more unique, interesting. They all looked, like they all had kind of their own vibe going on. But
Their own vibe. And Crosshair was wearing a device around his head. It looked like a CPAP mask.
maybe it was. Yeah, because they get in disguise. They steal some clothing there because they're gonna stick out. And the other thing too, I thought that the way that Man and the Imperials there on Lau sort of connected the dots between the downed shuttle and these two that just sort of show up out of nowhere. I thought that seemed really believable. I was glad that they sometimes in a show like this, they don't necessarily show you how they connect those dots, but seeing the patrol going over and seeing the down shuttle and Man making a big deal out of these two, or I've never seen them before. Obviously Man is at that bar probably every day, every night. So I like that. I like that this show and not every episode, right? You go back 3 seasons, it's had its ups and its downs, but I don't feel that this show especially this season, isn't playing down to anybody. I really feel they're telling a very, very tight story. It's being paced really well. Some people were saying that this was filler. I don't know why. This is not filler. I do not find this episode filler. Because it led to the reunion of Omega and the Batch. And did we expect them to be able to make a clean getaway from Tantus without any stops, any hurdles in between? So I liked it, but I also liked that they didn't sit on it for too long. We didn't get 3-4 episodes of Omega and Crosshair trying to make their way. I'm glad she was able to make her money in one sitting, and we weren't sitting on this planet for 3 episodes as she continued to, while Crosshair was fending off Imperials so that she could sit there and hustle people. Like, I feel like if this was Bad Batch season 1 or 2, that's what we would have gotten.
Yeah,
But
you're right. You're right.
You know, maybe they've learned.
There would have been extended time with just Crosshair and Omega. It was really satisfying to see them reunite with what remains of the Bad Batch at the end of the episode. And I think they're back to being a happy family of 4 once again. But this time, instead of Tech and Echo, there you have Crosshair, and and then there's Batcher, of course, who.
Right. What was the name of that? And I don't mean to put you on the spot. We can have the chat answer, because I have the Omega Black Series figure, and it came with that little creature. She had another pet at one point. What was that?
She did. I don't recall the other pet.
She had another pet, and I just was hoping that Batcher lasts longer than this one. If you remember Omega's first pet, give us a call, 708-866-1737. We got some super chats. Y'all are so generous with those. Let's start with Calvin. Calvin McPherson says, it's a shame that so many people dismiss anything animated. If Bad Batch were live action, I believe it would get Mando levels of attention. I actually got a little misty-eyed at the end. Excellent episode. I did think that the reunion was pretty heartfelt and touching. I didn't sit there and weep, but I mean, I felt it. I felt it when she hugged Wrecker, and Wrecker was wiping the tears away. I mean, it's really hard to say if this show was live action. I don't know that this show could be live action necessarily. I suppose it could, but it's really hard to say. If this was live action, it would be a huge monstrous hit, and everybody would be talking about it. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I'm glad that it's animated. I think it fits the characters. I think it fits the story that they're telling. Not that I wouldn't like to see, perhaps at some point, a live action version of a Hunter or a Wrecker or an Echo or somebody show up in a series. But I don't think, I personally don't need it to be live action for it to matter to my Star Wars.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm fine with having an animated level of Star Wars and a live action level of Star Wars. And I'm still kind of struggling in the wake of Ahsoka season 1 at how many elements from animation crossed over into live action. I've always, for forever, I felt like keep the live action where it is and keep the animation where it is. There's no need to cross-pollinate so much. But there was a lot of effective things happening in Ahsoka, and maybe just I feel like it's not the execution and creation of the animated characters in live action. It's having to deal with all of the stories that were told in animation. That's like,
yeah, right. It's hard to separate what the issue is, what's really the problem.
And so I feel like a lot of times when I look back at Ahsoka season 1, and I have rewatched many times, and I enjoy it, but from a storytelling standpoint, I feel like it gets crushed under the weight of its own animated history.
Yeah.
And I would have preferred a fresh start story-wise with the live action Ahsoka. I would have appreciated a fresh start.
Maybe the problem is that by nature of these things tying so, in the case of Ahsoka, tying so much into the animation, well, geez, that's a lot of episodes across 4 seasons. So when it ties into animation, by extension, it ties into a lot of different characters, a lot of different story plots, across a fairly lengthy period of time, multiple years. So, as we talk about, when you had 3 movies to talk about and then 6 movies to talk about, and then a couple seasons of Clone Wars. But as the legacy of this continues to unfold, and there's more and more mythology, the cost of entry is going to get high. And when you steep it in animation, where you've got all those seasons and all those episodes, man, you really are creating a lot of backstory that people need to sift through.
Yeah, a lot of backstory. I mean, that's why comic books often reboot with a new issue number 1. I mean, they almost do it to death nowadays. But there was a period in time when that would be a great point of entry for new fans, is when a comic book that's been around for decades suddenly reboots with a new issue number 1. That's a sign to fans who may have been on the outside looking in. Hey, this might be a good place to dive in.
Here's a super chat. This is Benny Bingo with $5 super chat. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate that.
Benny Bingo. He's my favorite mobster. Benny Bingo. Hey, Benny Bingo. Forget about it.
He's always playing bingo on Tuesday nights. Kid Vader 23. Hey, boys. This is Danny from On Vegas.
On Vegas. He's on Vegas.
Is that like being in Vegas? Unfortunately, I won't be able to join in live. Can't wait to listen tomorrow morning. All right. Well, you got it. You'll be listening in the morning. Yeah. Appreciate it. Thanks for the super chat.
So how you doing? We missed you. Too bad you weren't with us last night. Hanging out in Vegas. I guess whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but thanks for the super chat.
Here's Chris Have. He says, Card Shark Omega, Force Sensitive, an amazing gambler, or a dirty, rotten cheat? Great app. Thanks for the entertainment, boys. RFR number 1. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
I'm not totally sold on her being strong in the Force.
I'm not either. Yeah, I'm not either. Yeah. Everyone assumes that this infusion of the midichlorians is exactly that. It's taking Omega, infusing her with midichlorians. And I'm not quite sure. I think that experiment isn't necessarily happening in Omega's body. I think it might be happening in the tube,
right?
Where they're taking her blood and the midichlorians. That's what and I'm not saying that's for sure. But I'm not assuming that she's chock full of midichlorians.
When they take the blood from their subjects, which are all clones, they take the blood, they put it in a vial. The vial gets placed into that centrifuge. Then you see a droplet of blood being added to the vial. That's the midichlorian-rich blood, potentially the blood of Palpatine. And it gets, or a Jedi. A Jedi, like maybe a Jedi that Palpatine has in captivity in the Fortress Inquisitorius down in the basement there, where they're frozen in amber, like so many flies from Jurassic Park. Or mosquitoes. So that's where they're getting this midichlorian-rich blood, and they drop it into these vials. Now, what happens to most of the vials? There's some sort of cellular breakdown that makes the blood sour.
Right. Yeah, it's not viable.
It's not viable blood. But when they add to Omegas, they discover that there is no cellular breakdown. The white blood cells, the red blood cells, they work together with the hemoglobin and all of that terminology you want to use.
Oh, now I got to be a scientist. I got to be a doctor in order to like Star Wars.
To be specifically a phlebotomist. Yes, somebody who works with blood, and you have to understand that her blood can actually withstand the inclusion of midichlorian-rich blood. It doesn't suffer the degradation, the breakdown, the lack of cellular cooperation, however you want to look at it. That's why I don't think they're saying that she's unusually strong in the Force or has really strong midichlorian-rich blood. It's just they're just saying that her system can handle it.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's dead on. I think that's what's happening here. Now, that doesn't mean that in this new age of Star Wars where you don't have to have a high midichlorian count to even be force sensitive. That doesn't mean that Omega can't show certain skills, certain talents, or somewhere down the line she could end up becoming someone who's able to use the force. But I don't think that's where this show is going. I don't think this show is about Omega becoming a Jedi or something like they're telling that story with Sabine and Ahsoka, and they told it a little bit in Rebels, and you already had Ezra and his journey with Kanan. I mean, you can't have every Star Wars story be about an up-and-coming Jedi Knight. And to me, that's some of what makes this show feel pretty fresh. We're still getting treated to Jedi lore and mythology and all of that, but it's not being told through the Jedi or by watching someone become a Jedi.
Yeah. And the mystery about it all too. It's not a gimmick. When I think the mystery box gimmick comes into play is when the characters all know what's going on and the audience is left in the dark. In this case, Omega is clueless about who she is, what makes her an aberration, all of that stuff. She doesn't really understand all of that. So she's discovering as the audience discovers. And that's what makes her a sympathetic character for us. That makes her a character we can root for. I have a hard time rooting for Ahsoka sometimes in the Ahsoka series because she has all of this knowledge about things, but we in the audience are being kept in the dark. And same goes on with all the characters in Ahsoka. They have these motivations you don't understand. Balin has motivations you don't understand. Even through a full season. Shin. Yeah. It's all just like very just fuzzy, blurry. Thrawn. We don't know what his grand plan is. We don't know what's motivating him. We're kept in the dark. It only works when the mystery only works when the characters they're not withholding information from us.
You want them to be fellow travelers with you on the journey.
The reason Luke Skywalker worked so well is because he didn't know about his background. He was told one thing and kept learning things about his father and his family as it went along. We as the audience learned with Luke. You have to be in lockstep with these characters if they're going to be successful protagonists in any story.
Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, it just feels like the characters are holding out on you.
Yes. And what's the purpose for that? If you're kept in the dark and as the audience, if anything, the audience should be a step ahead of the characters.
Right.
We should know things they don't know.
Yes. And we were kind of burned by this to some degree with the sequel trilogy because we were sort of open to it during The Force Awakens. We were like, okay, all right, all this mystery, there's going to be a big payoff. And then somewhere between The Force Awakens coming out and The Last Jedi, we learned that the writers didn't know.
Yeah. Well,
we're sitting here we spent 2 years debating who's Rey's parents, only to find out they didn't know when they wrote it. They didn't know who her parents were. And it's like, well, why am I sitting here thinking about this when you didn't even think enough about it to answer the question?
You don't want to pull the curtain back so far. And as Star Wars fans, we've always been trained by George, who often was flying from the seat of his pants himself. But he always made it seem like, oh, no, this has all been figured out. Even if he's BSing us, it makes it a better experience because you want to have confidence in the storytellers.
Yeah. I'd rather not know. Maybe that's some of it, too. It's just we know too much. We know too much
how the sausage gets made, so we don't want to eat it sometimes.
Right.
But the thing that does work with Rey is she's in the dark about a lot of things. So we are kind of in lockstep with her to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm. I would say that's true. Yeah, I would say that's true. I guess it's just the lack of a satisfactory payoff.
Well, the execution is flawed, to say the least.
All right, let's jump to the phones. We got, let's start with John in New York. John, you're on with Rebel Force Radio. Thanks for waiting. Hello.
Johnny.
Yo, what up? Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Awesome. Hey, guys, how you doing? Chut.
How great.
Yeah. you guys actually surprised me. I thought I'd hear a little bit of banter, but nope, boom, right on the air. So all right, let's go. We're live.
We're live.
We're doing it live.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, moving right along. Yeah, great episode. I really liked just the level of sustained tension. Like it was a heavy episode, and it was just, for me, I felt there was a lot of just tense moments. I mean, I had no doubt that Omega was going to get out just fine. Of course, there's that lingering question of whether or not Crosshair, when's the ultimate sacrifice going to come?
Wait! You said when is the ultimate sacrifice going to come?
Sacrifice.
Are you predicting a big sacrifice? We already got one. I mean, we already lost. We already lost Tick.
On Crosshair's part, yeah. I mean, I think it's like I feel like it's pretty much a foregone conclusion at this point. Like it's being telegraphed pretty heavily. But I suspect that that's going to be used to sort of like to smooth over things between Hunter, Wrecker, and Crosshair. But the main thing I wanted to talk about was I wanted to answer Mariana's question from last week, because it seemed like everybody kind of like, everybody sort of like, agreed that it was, that she was.
Well, wait a minute. Now, for the people that are listening this week, hold on. John, we're going to recap for the people that are listening this week and might not have caught it. Mariana, who's a good friend of the show and a loyal listener, she asked us, what do we say to people when they criticize Star Wars and say that it's what was the specific criticism? I'm trying to remember. It was about criticizing Star Wars.
Yeah, I think
I remembered.
Yeah. Maybe you remember better, John. Hey, John, do me a favor. I could tell you're hands free and talking into the speaker. Will you turn the thing off and just hold the phone up so we can hear what you're saying?
Sure.
Because I could tell you're hands free, and that goes for anyone who calls in. No hands free, okay? I mean, come on.
Is this better?
I could hear John's hand gestures like through the phone. I could hear him. He's doing all kinds of. All right, John. What was Mariana's question? I thought I remembered, and apparently I didn't remember. Something about people being critical of Star Wars.
So the what the criticism that was popular last week was when things in the Bad Batch, or specifically New Star Wars, connects to things in the sequel trilogy, specifically the Snoke clone Palpatine.
Yes, it was if people don't like it was if people don't like the sequel trilogy, and that's where all roads are leading. Right. Why should they be into current storytelling?
It's the crowd that wants to pretend the sequel trilogy doesn't exist. So any sort of acknowledgement of it drives them up a wall. But again, the way I've always approached it, and I should have said this last week, is I've always approached Star Wars is, let's talk about the Star Wars that exists. Let's not talk about some fantasy world Star Wars. Whether or not you agree with the way the filmmakers are approaching the story or whatever, it is what it is. And that's the story that's being told. And there's never going to be a reboot or a redo of the sequel trilogy. They're going to keep building upon that, because it requires a lot of building upon. There's a lot of plot holes to fill there. And Lucasfilm knows this. They know this. So filling in the blanks with shows like The Bad Batch and novels and comics and what have you is a hell of a lot easier than calling up J.J. Abrams again and saying, hey, let's do a redo on episode 7.
I would, if I could, I would go even further and say, for those that are, this is connecting to the sequel trilogy. This is connecting to Palpatine, Snoke stuff. And I would say to that, this isn't about Snoke. This isn't about Palpatine. This is about Omega and the Bad Batch and Sith weird science. And it's about unraveling those mysteries and delving into it. So what if it connects a little bit to the sequel trilogy? At the end of the day, It's more about these characters in this moment, and trying to say that it's about the sequel trilogy, and I don't want to watch it because it's, and having a problem with it because of that. It's really missing the forest for the trees. I mean, I gave Tyler an analogy, and I said, if you're renovating a house and you're building a house or you're renovating it and you have a room that you don't like quite how that room was built, you're not going to completely ignore that room while you're renovating the rest of the house. You're definitely going to make sure that whatever issues you had with that messed up room in the first place, that you're going to make sure that while you're renovating the rest of the house, that you're going to make sure that it all goes together to the best of your ability. So I think that everybody getting all bent out of shape that it connects to the sequel trilogy really does miss the forest for the trees. You're robbing Omega and the Bad Batch and the rest of the characters in this story of being able to own it in this moment. And I'm telling you, they are owning it.
Yeah, well, I like that both things are true. I like that we have some really fun characters to spend time with, and I like that it's connecting to a larger story. I think Star Wars always needs to connect to a larger story because that's its foundation. It's mythology.
The mythology.
Right. So I think that you've got to have that through line. But I also agree with you that if the focus is always about the background and the subplot that's feeding into some of these other stories, I agree. I think people, if that's all they're focused on, then they are missing out, because there's some really great action in the foreground, some really great characters in the foreground. You had a theory about Crosshair's hand, according to Tyler's notes.
Yeah, it wasn't so much of a theory. I had noticed that Jimmy had mentioned that Hemlock actually had grabbed his hand peculiarly when he was interrogating Nala Se, and I noticed that as well. And I don't know if I have so much of a theory, but I will point out that everybody, at least as far as Omega, and I'm pretty sure this is the case for everybody else, whenever they were getting their blood drawn, whenever Omega was getting her blood drawn, they're pulling it out from the back of their hand. And so why would Hemlock be also getting his blood drawn? Maybe that's why Crosshair's hand hurt, was because he was getting his blood drawn out of the back of his hand, just like everybody else.
Oh, come on.
So I just wanted to point out
That's
that
ridiculous.
Maybe there was
You put a Band-Aid on it, you go on with the
I
rest of your day. Haven't you ever had blood drawn? Come on.
Not out of the
It
back
doesn't,
of
it
my
doesn't
hand.
affect you if you're a sharpshooter. Oh, they took blood out of my hand.
And they're not even using a needle. You notice it's like Star Trek. It's like one of Bones McCoy's devices. It just goes right on the skin and
weird space medical stuff.
Right. There are no
Omega does
needles
react.
in space.
She does seem like she winces slightly, though, when her blood is taken from Nala Se in the season premiere. She winces a little, like, oh.
It hurts. Yeah.
But maybe she's just being a kid. You know, you ever see a kid have blood drawn? Oh, man. The mayhem.
She wanted a lollipop. She wanted to make sure that she got her sucker on the way
and some
out.
Stickers.
Right. All right.
Well,
hey, thanks,
John has some good things to say, and
Yeah,
I didn't mean to cut him off. I just want to make sure he said everything he needs to say.
Yeah. All right. Got another.
He's gone.
He's gone.
Yeah.
And come on. We got Blake's take. How about that? Yes! Blake is.
God, I was getting worried.
He's here. He's here. Blake is here. And I'm sure he's got more than one theory to lay on us.
I can't wait to hear.
Hey, chut.
Chut,
hey,
bud.
Chut, Blake.
Hey, so how you guys doing?
Good. Doing a show, hanging out on the YouTube. Yeah. Doing our thing. What do you got for us?
So basically, I first want to start off saying that this episode, it was kind of an episode that we really needed, so we can this way they can meet together, and it was a pretty good episode altogether. But I also feel like they should have waited, last last episode, whenever they let Omega and Crosshair escaped, I think they should have waited at least another episode, so this way it like builds up. In this way, it's like a bigger way of them escaping instead of them just escaping like that. Like maybe like Bad Batch or someone could have came in
Blake,
and got
I feel
them,
like
halfway.
I'm kind of glad that they didn't drag it out any longer. You've got Crosshair's very, very capable. Omega's pretty darn capable too, and you've seen both of them get out of scratches worse than the situation that they were in once they got off of Tantus. Tantus, that was the Hail Mary escape. Everything after escaping Tantus is, I think, relatively easy for them. Easy enough, by the way. If Crosshair really thought that this Omega had no talent for any of this, that she was just a disaster, I don't think he would have humored her and watched her do, her approach or go her way. So I kind of was feeling like Crosshair was going to let this play out just long enough, unless he had to intervene. I felt like Crosshair was probably more in control than he was letting on. But no, I personally, I'm glad. Now, were you saying that you want them to establish more of a relationship on screen, or was it just to build up more tension?
No. So basically, I was saying basically, I feel like it was like a bit like too easy. They should have like made it like more, like basically where it was harder to escape instead of they just escaped like kind of faster than it would have took. Like,
did you see that herd of wild Star Wars beasts? I mean, that was quite a distraction.
Oh yeah, that was good.
All right. Well, what else? Any other takes for us this week, other than that they needed more build up to their escape?
Yeah, I have a theory and I have a question.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask my question. Do we exactly know if the Asajj Ventress that we see in the trailer that we know is coming, do we know if that's like the actual Asajj and not like a clone or something?
No, we don't. We don't. And there's a big mystery about that because according to the timeline and the book Dark Disciple, Asajj Ventress should already be dead at this point in the timeline. So I think you might be onto something, Blake.
I was thinking because I knew Asajj would be dead in the timeline at this point, but I wasn't completely sure. So
could she be a clone?
I was thinking, and I was like, that if it was a clone of Asajj, that they were trying to test out to see if that could hold Palpatine's, it could have enough midichlorian count in it.
That could be an experiment.
Yeah.
That could be one of Hemlock's experiments, cloning Asajj Ventress. And in that way, maybe through flashbacks, we'll get the story of Dark Disciple told, abridged, obviously, shortened in the Clone Wars. I mean, in the Bad Batch. We'll actually get that untold Clone Wars story told visually via animation and not a novel.
Yeah, who is it that kills her in Dark Disciple with the Force lightning?
Said.
Someone in the chat will remind us. I can't remember. I did the research for the trailer review, and I can't remember. It didn't stick. Blake, so that's your question. What's your theory now?
All right. So we know how they can track the cargo ship while they're on that planet and everything. So they know they were at that planet, but probably by the time Hemlock is there, the Bad Batch is gone. Or something like that. Like they might.
You're talking about the planet where they rendezvoused at the end together?
Yeah. I feel like I feel like at some point in the series, so the Bad Batch is probably going to go back to the one planet where they dropped off those kids.
Oh yeah, Pabu.
Dooku, by the way,
Pabu.
killed Asajj. It was Dooku.
Oh, it was Dooku. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Of course
Killed
it
his
does.
apprentice. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that Hemlock is gonna go to Pabu at some point with troopers. This way they can get
Ooh.
Omega. This way they can run some more tests. And so basically the Bad Batch, Omega will probably get captured again. It was way too easy the first time. And they're
Yes.
going to make sure that she don't escape this time.
Oh, this
Since
is a
they
Blake's
see the
take I'm on
count,
board with.
she can handle it.
All right. Let's.
And
I'm
so
on board.
then
Go ahead,
and so
Blake.
then
I
from
interrupted
that,
you. I'm
they're
sorry.
gonna. It's all right. I'm
Thanks,
just
Blake.
talking whatever comes to my mind.
No, it's good.
I was like thinking about this.
You're on
Yeah.
a roll,
I was
buddy.
thinking a little bit about this.
Yeah, just a little
And then
bit.
I
I mean, the episode just came out today, and you're already thinking through. So what Blake was throwing down is that this escape was all too easy, and that
Yes,
there's
I
going to
agree.
be a bigger escape, and after Omega is abducted from the peaceful planet of Pabu, and maybe Hemlock and his stormtroopers are going to rain fire on that peaceful island planet of Pabu.
Yes, and I'll tell you why I love this
Yeah, they're
idea,
not-
Blake. Oh no, please go ahead. Go ahead. You're our guest. I want you to talk.
And then I also think that the Bad Batch is gonna get the 2 kids, well, the 3 actually, that they dropped off on that planet.
Oh
If they-
yeah,
Yeah.
They're clones. They're gonna know how everything works basically in the facility because they were at one of Hemlock's facilities, so they'll
that's
know
right.
more about it. And then from that, they're gonna use them to help them try to get Omega back. So this way they have her.
Mm.
That's
All
good
right.
stuff.
And I feel like it's gonna be like a big escape kind of thing, where it'll kind of be like basically Hoth on Empire Strikes Back. It'll be a big out battle.
Wow.
Yeah, and then the question will be, will Crosshair join his brothers, the Bad Batch, in rescuing Omega? Because he said he's never going back to Tantus. He's not going back to Tantus. But will he go back? Will he pay the ultimate price? Make the ultimate sacrifice? Who knows? Thanks, Blake. Good.
Wait, don't let
good
Blake
call.
go.
Our
Don't
too
let
late.
him go. Damn, why do you do that so fast? I'm not done
Fast?
talking
We've
to
been
him.
talking to him for 9 minutes.
Well, what else? Who else are we going to talk to?
We're going to talk to
I like-
Marty from Georgia.
I want to just back up what he's saying. I like the dramatic impact of it because we spent 2 episodes last season on that Pabu planet,
Yeah.
and they seem like a kind of a slow burn and filler. But I think in that period of time, they were building up some sympathy amongst us as viewers for the people of Pabu.
For sure.
And we look at it, we say that's a tranquil, beautiful place. It's like paradise. I mean, who wouldn't want to live there? And to have the Empire then rain down holy hell on the people of Pabu because of the Bad Batch. I mean,
Oh.
the dramatic possibilities are endless. And what I wanted to ask Blake is how his grades are in school when it comes to writing, because I think he has a profound grasp on the way storytelling can be effectively executed
At his young age.
And yes, I was just wondering if that's something he excels at in school. So I'll ask him next week.
Next week,
because
he'll be
I know
back.
Blake will call in next week.
He will be back. Let's go to Georgia and talk to Marty. Marty. Hey, Marty.
Hey, check, guys.
Chut, buddy.
Hey, Marty.
Hey, I let Blake
to
go
hear
so
you
that we
guys.
could get you on the air. So you better make this good. Mac had follow-ups for Blake.
Oh my!
No pressure, Marty. No pressure.
Definitely thought this was a good episode.
it just looks like some of the best Star Wars just visually. Everything from the stormtroopers with the cloaks to the bartender droid looks super cool.
Yeah, I love the cantina. That was great.
Also seeing when Omega reunited, that got me in the feels, but also the animation for her tears looked great. Like it just shows how far animation has come.
She had tears. Wrecker had tears. Yeah, Jimmy Mack had tears.
Yeah, I had my fair share of tears during that one. But the thing I did want to say, I heard it in the episode. I think I heard the new Wilhelm scream that you guys were talking about a couple weeks ago.
In this episode,
when some other people were pointing that out.
Yeah, when the stormtrooper got blasted backwards by the freighter taking off, I could have sworn that was it because I was like, that was a really unique scream. Like that just doesn't sound like any sound I've heard in Star Wars before. So I just wanted to point that one out just because you guys mentioned it, and then I heard some playbacks from when you guys talked about it, and it just sounded almost identical to what I think Matthew Wood was working on with his new Wilhelm scream.
Yeah.
So,
well,
just my thought. I would have loved to have heard a Wilhelm scream either when Man got dragged into the cage or when that got blasted.
Oh, that would have been wonderful.
Yeah, that would
have been great. Because there's only one Wilhelm scream. I've really come to that. At first, I thought, wow, what an interesting challenge. We have to find the new Wilhelm scream. But after all these years, I'm in a place where I feel like it's almost sacrilege to try to even consider replacing the Wilhelm scream with anything else. And the thing that has been presented to us as what could possibly be the new Wilhelm scream, quite honestly, it sucks compared to the original. It sucks. Give it up, Matt Wood. Give it up, Skywalker Sound. I'm talking directly to you guys, my brothers in audio, who I love and adore. Give it up.
There's only one.
Yeah.
There's only one.
There's only one.
Amen.
Only one Wilhelm.
Well, thanks, Marty. Thanks for the call. Hold on. Mac, do you have anything else for Marty?
Marty, can you replicate the Wilhelm scream? Can I hear your attempt to try to Wilhelm scream yourself? Is that it? No, come on. You got to work on it. Now you can hang up on Marty. As a matter of
Marty's
fact,
out.
Don't just hang up on Marty. Slam the phone down.
All right, well, let's check in with, we got some more super chats here. Here's David. David says, love the episode. My kids loved it too, especially the reunion. Speculations on the mission now that they're together so soon. Exo next episode. I don't know what Exo is.
I think he means Echo.
Echo. Oh, okay. It's like, I don't know. It's a Star Wars podcast. And
Echo's
you never know.
He's a package deal these days. He comes with Captain Rex.
Yeah.
And I think that now that we're 4 episodes into this season done, I think it's about time Captain Rex and Echo came back into the fold. And let's build the team. Hopefully that's what the guys do after this. After they hash it out with Crosshair, they get back on the Havoc Marauder and they fly off to go reunite with Rex and Echo and whatever sort of militia those former clone troopers have developed. So, and we know a lot of clone troopers are on the outs. They're disenfranchised. They've been cast aside. And that was the mission Echo and Rex were on, were to go and help out any of their brothers who have been given the boots by the Empire in like the worst of ways, but yet somehow managed to find their freedom. So that's what the guys are looking for. And so hopefully they've built up their ranks and we can finally see this new clone war go down during the dark times of the Empire. Clone War 2.
Yeah, I think we're going to get an episode of Crosshair not being fully comfortable and perhaps not being completely resigned to a life with the Bad Batch. I think he's always going to have sort of one foot out the door. There's going to be some trust issues there. And then something's going to go down to where he has to really commit one way or the other, and then trust will be restored. But then I think they're gonna have to go through the same process again when they do find Echo and Rex, because Echo is also going to have his misgivings about Crosshair, and so I think that we're going to have at least a couple, maybe 3 episodes. I don't want to say it's filler, but I'm going to say where the main point is going to be trying to reestablish Crosshair as a part of this family in some way.
And he seems, at least at the end of episode 4, season 3, he seems reluctant even to be there. So we'll have to see how he deals with that, much less the way he stabbed his crew in the back and turned his back on his brothers. He's dealing with a lot of guilt. You know, I think out of all the Bad Batch, Crosshair is the most likely not to live on beyond season 3, just because he's got so much on his back right now as far as the missteps he's made in the past.
Yeah, he's
probably dealing with some guilt. I would love to see Crosshair actually deal with guilt in a real way. You know, because we know that exists within him, but he buries it deep down because he's a soldier through and through. He doesn't have time for emotions like that. But the Bad Batch are different.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised if the imps make their way to Pabu and Crosshair is there, that speculation might turn towards Crosshair and say, "Hey, wait a minute. How did they find us? Are you a double agent? Are you
the distrust?"
Yeah,
Yes.
I think he's
Hard
going
to live down your past.
Yeah, and I think they're gonna. I think if it rains on your birthday, they're gonna blame Crosshair there on Pabu. Sal B. Crum in with a super chat says, "I'd love to see a conversation between Hemlock and Thrawn. A 30-second chat would take 3 minutes." Yeah. Hashtag whisper, pause, whisper. Yeah, that is true. They
Throw
do love to
Nala
talk.
Say into the mix. I mean, what kind of lewds are they feeding that Kaminoan? She is so slow and deliberate in everything she says. So
It takes a long time to have a conversation on Camino. Fat Bandy Coot says, "What are your thoughts on maybe the clones aging interfering with the midichlorian stability?" That's interesting. That's very interesting.
Well, we have speculated on whether or not Omega has that enhanced aging. You know, I don't think she does. They've said she's unaltered. And so the only other clone we've heard being referred to as unaltered was Boba Fett. And he does not have that extreme advanced aging, that accelerated aging.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was obviously necessary because there was a rush order on those clones on Camino because war was a-coming. And so they had to double age these guys. So the clones we see in episode 2 are 10 years old. They're 10-year-olds, a bunch of 10-year-olds running around on the battlefield of
Geonosis.
How did I forget Geonosis? And I can't even drink that one off. I finished the beverage.
Oh, no. All right. Well, in the meantime, Ferris84 says, "Honestly, never been biggest Omega fan, but this was by far my favorite episode with her. She played it so cool. She's matured. RFR number 1, hashtag Wedge for Prez 2024.
I'd vote for Wedge in a second. Are you kidding me?
Wedge Antilles? Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Yeah, no, I as we've said, love Omega. Think it's it's a really good character. Tanya says, "With the reunion occurring so soon, I sense a character death is right around the corner."
Ooh.
Oh, Tanya, you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Just as soon as we get some good news, you're waiting for, bad news.
Yeah. I don't know if it's going to be right around the corner, but I do anticipate 1 or 2, significant character deaths happening in season 3. So, yeah, but I don't know if it's like right around the corner. We have to be lured into that false sense of security. Oh, look, everyone's all brought back together. They're all reunited. Yay, let's go take on the Empire. We have to have that false sense of security before the hammer drops again.
Right. Well, and here's the other thing. It may not just be Crosshair that has to be convinced to go back to Tantus, because as you recall, before this all went down, the Bad Batch were very content with the idea of living out the rest of their days with Omega on Pabu. It's going to be Omega that saw the horrors of what's going on in Mount Tantus that's going to say, well, we can't just live here in paradise as if our brothers aren't being tortured and worse on Mount Tantus. So we've got absolutely have to go and rescue them. And you saw, this sort of alluded to with the 3 young clones in the second episode, where they were shocked that the Bad Batch, would come back or would be out looking for Omega because they were abandoned and tossed aside and no one cared. No one came looking for them. So this idea of going back and loyalty, it keeps returning here in this series. So, but I think that definitely Crosshair is not going to be the only one that has to be sold that job. John David says Pabu is not going to make it out of season 3.
See, this is all fresh for me. I never considered. I always looked at that spot as being their oasis, their place to go off the grid. It's where they're going to go to retire naturally. But then with Blake's call, I really started to consider the dramatic possibilities of the Empire showing up there. And really, I'm starting to drool a little bit at the possibilities, as far as drama.
I can't believe you want this.
Well, because I love in storytelling when the stakes are very high and unpredictable. And we actually, here we are in the final season. So, I mean, maybe no one survives. I'd hate to see it end up that way. I got to say, I really would. But I don't think anyone's getting a free pass here as this season continues to build upon itself and then eventually toward the grand finale. I think we're going to have some shockers. And I want that. I love the dramatic tension that something like that, just even the notion of that provides. That's good storytelling.
It is. Pistol Pete says, thanks for the content, boys. Well, thanks for the super chat, Pete. And Sunny Boy Nuggy says, if you're not watching this show live, you're missing out. Thanks for the show, guys. Well, appreciate that. Thank you, Sunny Boy. And finally, we got Garage Jim Life says, great show as usual, guys. Glad to be back to close out the Bad Batch with you in my garage. Jim lifting and watching. He probably looks like Wrecker.
No, I know him. He's called in before. He's got a great YouTube channel. And he does all these workouts and stuff in his garage, and it's a whole thing. Garage Gym Life. Yes, that's a channel.
That's the
YouTube
recommend. Channel, Garage Gym Life? Okay.
That's a good one. That's a good one. And he's a knowledgeable Star Wars fan.
That's good. I could use some knowledge on working out and getting in shape in the year 2024. I tell you that. That would be great. So Garage Gym, if you got any advice, I definitely need it.
It's like what Michael Jordan always used to say in those commercials, just do it.
Yeah, right.
Be like Mike.
That was a cue for the close music. There it is.
2 weeks in a row, Swank.
I know. I'm gonna have to fix this button over here. All right, well, it's been great fun chatting with everybody. Thanks for all of the super chats, all of the callers, and thanks, of course, to our call screener, Tyler Page. Tyler, thank you, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me as usual. A lot of good calls.
Yeah, were you as taken by Blake's take as Jimmy Mack was? This idea of the war coming to Pabu.
Yeah, it's something I definitely didn't consider. I'm only thinking like 4 steps ahead. Blake is thinking like 10. So yeah, it's kind of hard to keep up. Yeah. So that was definitely a turn I didn't expect. One thing that I don't know that got addressed was, and it might have, but it's out of left field too, is was Batcher communicating with Omega during that card game in some way about? What? I know.
Wait a minute. You're saying that they're pulling a Rain Man there? Batcher is looking at the cards and
maybe grunting or I don't know.
I gotta rewatch that scene now.
Man,
he kicks Batcher out after. He's like, I don't trust that dog.
Maybe he's just being superstitious. I don't know, but yeah, I got to go back and look for that, and then I got to see Hemlock with the glove and the hand, and I got to see. I still really haven't caught these quick throwaway shots of Crosshair nursing that bad hand. No, I have not seen this. I gotta check it out. Oh, Matt keeps a black glove at his desk right there in the studio for just such an occasion. Look at
this. Is actually Luke Skywalker's actual glove.
Wow, that's where it ended up.
Yeah,
in Jimmy Mack's studio.
I bought it on eBay, but it's the eBay you only find on the dark web. Yeah, dark web eBay. It's real. They say it's real. Maybe when we're live on stage at the Rockwell Theater in Bristol for May the 4th Be With You, Swank, I'll slap you in the face with this glove. And that's how the whole show will begin. And it'll be more MMA. It'll be more MMA than your typical podcast, but it'll be a lot of fun. So everyone,
looking forward to that.
For more information on what we're doing May the 4th, go check out rebelforceradio.com. You'll find all the information there. Join us in Bristol, Connecticut. I know Tyler's going to be there.
Yeah. I'm bringing the beard too, I think.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is the beard coming? Does it get its own seat?
Yeah.
In the plane?
Oh, it's got its own seat on the plane, in the theater.
I love it. The beard sits in first class. He sits in with the economy.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Tyler, as always, appreciate it. Thank you, my friend. And to close things out, we got last super chat here. Just got it in. Turtle Wars. Great after show again, everyone. Thanks. Thank you, Turtle Wars. Appreciate it. Jimmy Mack, final thoughts on this week's episode.
Final thoughts. I mean, the episode really ended before I was even really settled in. I was shocked when the credits began, and that can either be a commentary on the brevity of the episode itself, or just how well the story was put together, or just the fact that it felt like it was shorter than usual. But it packed in a lot, I think. It gave us a lot of good character stuff with Omega and Crosshair. It showed us what happened. We had to know what happened after they escaped from Tantus. We saw the smoke coming out of the shuttle as they escaped the atmosphere of Tantus. So we knew, or it's not Tantus. What's the Wayland? Wayland is the planet. It's Mount Tantus. And as the shuttle escaped, we saw the smoke coming out of it. So we knew that they weren't going to make it very far before a crash landing of some sort. And it was really cool to see how everything unfolded, how they fit into this community on the planet. Again, remind me what the name of the planet is.
Wayland? Wayla?
No. The planet that
Lao.
And then with the slime ball Imperial captain and just everything, the way the dominoes fell in this episode was very satisfying. And I definitely wanted more by the time the credits got rolling, but they left us with that moment there, a great character moment with the survivors of the Bad Batch on one side and Crosshair on the other. And it doesn't look like anything but a reunion is going to happen. They're going to have to collaborate and work together just to survive. And then, maybe they'll part ways, or I think Crosshair will be convinced to stay on board and help these guys complete their mission. What is the mission? To get away from the Empire, find freedom? Or are they going to go down the route Omega wants to go down and free the prisoners on Mount Tantus? We know that she wants to do that. We also know she has an emotional connection to Nala Se. So that may be inspiring Omega with the desire to go back and help everyone else who's being held captive at Mount Tantus, being held captive and being experimented on, help them escape. So I like where this is going. Everything is happening. Storytelling wise, I really have no complaints or very few complaints. I do want to know what's going on with the hand. The hand thing is just, everyone has tried to explain to me what the hand thing is all about. And it's not there in the story. I need it to be presented in the story, and it's going to be an element that comes into play, I think, in a profound way at a certain point this season. Maybe it will connect both Crosshair and Hemlock, because they're both sort of reacting the same way to their hands. I don't know why. Hemlock, he's on a quest for discovery, and his ambition fuels that quest. So it's very possible he had been conducting experiments on himself. So maybe the same experiments he's conducting on Crosshair, he conducted on himself. So it brings that connection between the two characters. Great show. I'm really loving season 3 of The Bad Batch. Puff a pig, not in this episode.
All right, that'll wrap it up. We'll see you next week for more Bad Batch After Show, live Wednesday night, 9:00 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, the Rebel Force Radio Weekly Podcast returns this week, so there will be a new RFR that will drop for you. On Saturday.
Yes.
So spend your weekend with Rebel Force Radio. So you can check us out on Instagram, on X, on Facebook at Rebel Force Radio. You can go to the website, rebelforceradio.com. Subscribe to us on your podcatcher of choice. And don't forget, all of the callers tonight were members of our Patreon. Yeah, Patreon supporters, they get to, they jump to the head of the line all of our, on our live call-in shows. They also get various perks at some of our live events. We've got a big live event coming up May 4th. In Bristol, Connecticut. Those details can be found on the website. But also, they get access to exclusive podcasts that you can't find anywhere else. So in addition to the after shows, in addition to the weekly Rebel Force Radio podcast, there's a whole slew of shows available on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio, or go to rebelforceradio.com website and click on the Patreon banner, and there you go. So that'll do it for us this week. Thanks again to all of our callers. Thanks again to Tyler. We'll see you next time for Rebel Force Radio. I'm Jason.
And I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
the Force will be with you, always.